How do you think we should respond to this rupture in the global order? As Mark Carney said, this is a rupture, not a transition. So how do we respond to it?
Change is always extremely difficult. And there's also the question of what do you change to? And you can say, okay, it's easy to always point out the flaws of the current system, but it's difficult to understand the flaws of what you're going to. So, I mean, you look back at the U.S. Constitution, something I've studied in depth, its ratification process and how it was adopted, and what they were trying to do, and then there's what they actually accomplished, and those weren't exactly the same. And so you look at how do you make a change? It's there's I always divide policies up into where are you going and how do you get there. Uh, for example, there's a lot of talk, for example, in the United States about getting rid of the income tax and going to another type of tax, right? And it's got pros and cons and like everything else. I don't think it'll ever happen because even if you can come up fairly easily with a better tax. The question is how do you get there? And most of these, well, there's short term and long term transition issues. Short term, okay, but then there's long term. What about you're just going to attack? Say you're just, for sake of argument, you're only going to tax people when they spend money. The United States does not have a national sales tax. We tax income. So you can tax money when you earn it, or you can tax money when you spend it. And you can say, well, taxing spending is far, far more efficient and much better way to do things. Okay. Well, then what about I'm a bit older. What about people at retirement? So you taxed all their money when they earned it, but you didn't tax it when you spend it. Now you're going to change the system and tax when they spend it rather than when they earned it. Well, what of that person that spent their whole life paying taxes on the income they earn? Now they have to spend the rest of their life paying taxes again on the money that has already been taxed because now they're spending it. Those type of issues enter in. So when you talk about a world organization, okay, I can easily come up with what I think personally would be better world organization, such as what about a organization like the UN, but where the requirements for admission where you had to be a real democracy, right? And of course, now you got all kinds of problems about how you define what a real democracy is. But let's say you can figure that out. So if you're a dictatorship or a one party state, like if you're one like Russia, where they have the vestiges of a democracy, but that place is run by Putin, and Putin makes the laws, and okay, well, how do you get there, and how do you make that transition to a union of democracies as opposed to a union of states? Because now we have the UN. It's literally almost a joke because you'll have countries with huge human rights violations who are the head of the UN Committee on Human Rights because it was their turn. So, and then what do you do with an organization like that, right? So I don't know. If you had good, respectable uh, international organizations, then okay, that's one argument. I don't see many out there, and I'm not sure how we would get to one. If you could, if you could create one, how would you do the transitions? How would you even create it? So, yeah.
I think the European Union is quite a good model based on what you're talking about. They only admit countries that meet certain requirements of
Hmm.
democratic accountability and fair
Yeah.
systems in their country. But I don't think that would work on a global level without having some neutral authority, because someone would always have a higher level of control due to higher economic power or higher military strength. So it's definitely something that we need to look at to have global solutions to these global issues. We obviously need cooperation, but we also need to put justice at the center point of the solutions that we look for.